Kids learn about money from their parents. They know whether you tend to save up for fun purchases or pull out the credit card when temptation strikes. Since they're learning from you, talk to your kids about using their money wisely. Start by admitting your own mistakes, talking about your family budget, and discussing the importance of sharing some of your money with causes that are important to you. There are gentle ways to help them become wise stewards of their own money. To learn more, go to stcumoney.org.
Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business radio talk show with your host, Ryan McNeese. Business Talks is brought to you by STCU. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeese, and here in the studio is Lee Tate of Tate Manufacturing. Lee, we appreciate you being here with us. You have a long history and an interesting history within the manufacturing business and otherwise. Let's talk a little bit about how you even got into manufacturing.
I graduated as an engineer, a chemical engineer actually, and went to work as an electronics person who doesn't know anything about electronics. And I've been in electronics ever since. I know how to put them together, but I really don't know how they work. But I get exposed to lots of interesting ideas from clients who bring projects that need electronics to my company to build them. And a lot of times they don't have time or the money to pursue them.
So essentially they come up with an idea, but it outsource the production of it to Tate Manufacturing.
Yeah. My early history was working for very large companies that had thousands of employees, and I was eventually sent to Europe to run a factory. And when I came back to Spokane from that trip, I needed something to do. I was totally unemployable at that point because I'd had so much freedom, and I didn't want to work for somebody else. So that's when I started Tate Technology and the company that builds other people's electronics.
And what year was that?
That was in 1992.
1992. So you started Tate Manufacturing. How many employees did you start with? Probably you were the one.
We actually had our first job where we needed about 10.
About 10.
So we grew from 10 to 170.
Wow. And how long did that take? What was that growth cycle like?
That was just 8 years' time. We built for Telect, a local company that was growing like crazy. And in the dot-com crash in 1990, or in 2000
right.
it was, the market really took a tumble. About 80 to 90% of the electronics manufacturing jobs went away in this country and never came back.
What would be your advice for our listeners in terms of you took the step that a lot of people probably either wish they could take or like the idea of thinking about being an entrepreneur and starting their own business. I like your story in terms of you say you were unemployable, but clearly had massive amounts of skill, or you wouldn't have been able to start what you started. What's some advice that you'd have for folks that are looking to take a leap in any industry in terms of starting their own business?
If you have something that's unique that you can do that no one else can do quite as well, either technically or how fast you can get it done compared to the competitors you have, or something that you can do at lower cost, then you have an in. It helps to know the marketplace and to know who to go try to recruit as customers.
Right.
I fortunately had that knowledge in electronics in Spokane.
You had that knowledge going in.
I did.
Let's talk about some of the projects that you've enjoyed the most over the years, whether it be on contract that somebody's brought it to you to manufacture, or things you've come up with yourself.
One of the most interesting projects that I was involved in was actually in the logging industry. And when you build a tower with cables to pull logs up the hill to place the load on trucks, it typically is a very dangerous job, and someone has to walk the cables down the hill, hook them to
Skyline logging.
hook them to the logs, and stand out of the way while they start pulling them up the hill.
Well, I don't think you and I have had this conversation, but my mom's dad, my grandpa, is a logger for 60 years. So
But-
I know that well.
Radio technology in the 90s was beyond what the logging industry needed. So we built a little radio receiver that hooked to the choker on each log, and the guy in the tower could pull all the logs up. And when the first log reached the top of the hill, he could disconnect it without having to stop the others and have somebody go out there and be at risk for a safety risk. So that was a fun project. We did it for a company in British Columbia.
Out of Canada.
Right.
What year were you working on that project?
94.
94. Okay. And I know you're seeing so many of these projects come to you, but I know you're an inventive person yourself, and that fascinates me about you. I definitely view you as a tinkerer that whether you thought you were going to retire or not, I think your mind keeps going. You keep coming up with good ideas to manufacture. Tell us about the pipe product that you'd created recently.
Many irrigators have pipe that's not very far below the surface, and when they drive their heavy trucks and tractors over the ground, the pipe gets crushed, it breaks, and they have a leak, and they'd have to go back all the way to the shop to get parts to fix it.
Right.
So we came up with a product that allows the irrigator to unglue a broken pipe out of a joint and replace it with a new piece and be back up and running in just a few minutes. And we manufactured a whole line of products that go all the way up to 12-inch Schedule 80. And fascinatingly, we had the Palms, Atlantis, the Palms, and Dubai just buy a whole fleet of these things for their water parks and desalination systems in Dubai.
Wow. Now, how was that contact even made? I mean, you come up, part of the channels of distribution of products is interesting in that you got to come up with the idea first, then you got to make the darn thing. Then you got to find somebody that either market it or find somebody that finds it useful to them. How did you make the connection to Dubai for them to purchase this product?
Dubai found us through our website and wanted to buy. They're a massively huge company, and they said to us, you need to send us these units. And I said, no, we are a little company, and we're not sending until we know we can get paid.
Oh, my gosh.
So they wired the money, and we sent the unit.
But they found Tate Manufacturing.
No, they actually found a company called Pipe DeBonder.
DeBonder.
Separate company.
And what is the website for that?
PipeDeBonder.com.
There you go.
And Tate Technology builds the electronics in it. But Pipe DeBonder is its own company. And there's about 400 of these around the country.
Well,
the world.
that is fascinating that they found you in Spokane, Washington, basically, in this region, and you end up shipping to Dubai. It seems like even from a road building standpoint that concept of downtime, just in business interruption, if you will, that would be very efficient to be able to switch out these pipes. Is that the overall idea?
Particularly for big pipe, like Whitworth, for example, had a swim pool problem where they broke a 10-inch pipe. And
probably not easily accessible, too.
The fitting was buried in the concrete. So to dig up the concrete to replace the parts that were broken would have been probably $10,000 or $15,000 in 2 weeks of disrupting the users of the pool. We had it unglued in 30 minutes
and back
together.
Back and
so generally it pays for itself in just one repair.
So in terms of whether it be Whitworth finding you, obviously local, Dubai, which is fascinating that they found you via the internet, how do you generally market that product? How do you find the end user?
We have attended a few trade shows. A pool and spa is a fairly big industry for us.
Makes sense.
Irrigation is a big industry. But the bulk of the benefits are in industrial piping, like bottlers and wineries and breweries and places that use plastic pipe. And to be able to repair a leak in an hour as opposed to 2 or 3 trips to town and maybe 2 or 3 days, and buying airplane tickets for fittings.
Right.
It's a really useful tool for people who do industrial piping.
Well, and I
plastic.
think it's pretty clear the cost savings of using that type of technology. I think I just keep coming back to oftentimes there's a great product out there, but the consumer as a whole doesn't even know it exists. And so bringing it to market, if you will, sometimes can be a challenge, whether it be economically, to advertise, market, to get it into the proper channels that the right people hear about it. It sounds like you guys have been successful doing that, though.
I think a large part of selling something that's got a limited market, but that has a high ability to sell, requires social media.
I do too.
One plumber talks to another and says, "How'd you fix that pipe?" And, "Oh, I got this new tool called the pipe debonder." It also helped for us to be on This Old House.
Were you on This Old House?
We were on This Old House a couple years ago.
Okay, now you're speaking my language in terms of exactly how you meet that mass audience. So a show massively marketed on PBS type stations around the country. How did you make that first introduction to This Old House? Did Norm give you a call?
One of our most active reps is in Boston area. And that's where This Old House is produced and filmed. And it was through that rep we got access.
You know, it's stories like that I think our listeners and me specifically are fascinated with, that there can be as Malcolm Gladwell talks about, a real tipping point in a product where the product can exist, somebody can have the idea, manufacture it, but it kind of lingers, if you will. And then an introduction like that through one of your contacts really takes the product and its distribution to the next level. That's pretty cool.
We have 4,000 or 5,000 likes on Facebook for the product.
Well, and as they say, each of those folks of that 4,000 or 5,000 knows another 1,000 people. So it's a pretty exponential game.
It's interesting for a retired age person to try to use social media to sell something when the entire career of most people my age has been through trade shows and advertising and not through social media.
Well, and I think what fascinates me is the exponential difference between those two. You can go to a trade show, as you said, pay for plane tickets, sit there for 10 hours in a Las Vegas trade show and meet a certain number of folks versus your 4,000 or 5,000 contacts on social media. If all those folks are sharing it, it's a mathematical exponential blast. It's pretty amazing, and the engagement that you've created by doing that. Well, there's a couple other products that I'm definitely aware of that you've come up with over the years that I want to talk a little bit more about. But let's take a quick break for some of our sponsors and come right back to Lee Tate of Tate Manufacturing. Thank you, Lee.
In touch, online all the time. SpokaneTalksOnline.com.
What is a credit union? It's a cooperative, like a food co-op or a housing co-op, but the members share money. Credit unions offer the same services you'll find in a bank, but they're different from banks. First, credit unions are owned by their members, and credit unions are not for profit. Any money the credit union makes goes right back to the members in the form of low fees and good rates. To learn more, you can go to STCU's blog at stcumoney.org.
What is that you're holding? The Spokesman Review? Is it really even a factor in driving customer traffic anymore?
Yeah, sure is. Here, close your eyes and imagine a few people with $5 bills in their hands standing outside the door of your business.
Okay, I see them. I like it. People with money. What's your point? $5 isn't that much.
I know, but what if there were 300,000 people in front of your door with $5 bills in their hands?
Well, now you got my attention. That's $1.5 million. 300,000 people, where'd they come from?
Yeah, that's how many different people read the Spokesman Review every week in print, online, or on their mobile.
Wow, that's impressive.
All you got to do is invite them in. Run some ads.
The Spokesman Review has 300,000 readers a week? That's amazing. I had no idea.
Most people don't. That's why we're running this ad. In print and online, the Spokesman Review delivers customers for your business.
Home. That word means so much more than its 4 letters suggest. R, that letter, stands alone. When you see someone wearing a blue Block R, you're talking with a Realtor. Your local neighborhood Realtor can help you find your first home, your next home, or help you sell the one you have. Next time you think home, think Realtor. The brand makes the difference. This message brought to you by the members of the Spokane Association of Realtors.
Welcome back to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeese, and we're here in the studio with Lee Tate, and we were just chatting about the different, I'm going to call them inventions, really, that Lee's either come up with over the years that are out there in the marketplace, or other inventors and creative engineers have come up with, and Tate Manufacturing has manufactured and developed those for those clients. Lee, let's chat about another invention you came up with is related to the soft water tank. Tell us about that one, because I, for one, have one and it works. So let's tell the general public just how kind of revolutionary this really is.
It turns out that radio signals, AM radio signals, can be applied to the outside of a pipe, any material the pipe's made of, plastic or metal, and these signals change the way that the minerals that are dissolved in the water combine into a scale.
Which essentially create the hard water we all talk about.
Yeah, hard water is defined as how much mineral, primarily calcium carbonate, is dissolved into the water. It's dissolved so it doesn't cause a problem until the water is evaporated out, and then those minerals, the calcium and the carbonate, recombine into crystals to remake rock or limestone. And it's when that limestone is formed in the water that you get this really hard, nasty to remove scale on toilet bowls and faucets and shower heads.
Yeah, or the common one you see a lot is a glass shower door.
Right.
That just won't, it's just all blurry.
And chemistry doesn't take it off. You can use acids like lemon juice, vinegar, or even Coca-Cola is a pretty good acid etcher for
That's
hard,
a little,
hard water
little
scale.
scary since I like Coke quite a bit.
Yeah. But these electronic signals can be applied to the water without any plumbing, and they change the way the calcium and carbonate form crystals to where they don't, they still make the scale, they still make crystals, but they cannot stick to anything. So they just flush on out the pipe and go down the sewer.
Well, and talk to us technically about how simple this product really is for the consumer. Because I know, for one, I'd heard about it through a couple channels and decided I need one of those because we have had the traditional soft water tank over the years. But we literally used this device and removed our old traditional soft water tank and hooked this relatively small and relatively simple device. But talk about how you actually put this into your home system.
It's a box about 3 times as thick as a smartphone, about the size of a smartphone. You strap it on the outside of your pipe. You wrap copper bands around the pipe and plug it into the wall. It runs on 24 volts with a little charger. And that's it. There's no plumbing. And the units that we make, up to 30-inch pipe, are basically the same thing. There's a lot more copper bands, and they're a lot longer and a lot wider. But we create a field that the water passes through. And when the water passes through that field, it can no longer form scale that will stick. And so water heaters don't scale up. The elements in water heaters, both gas and electric, don't scale. Shower heads don't plug. Dishwasher heaters don't stop working because the scale deposit is so thick. And the biggest benefit is in cooling towers, where you see a big, tall office building that has a box on its roof. They spend thousands of dollars every month for chemical etchants to remove the scale from those cooling towers, where water is forced to evaporate at very high rates, and the scale deposits grow as much as 1/8 of an inch a week or more.
Well, to me, this certainly seems like a major interruption to the traditional soft water tank industry. How did you come up with this idea in the first place?
It turns out that this has been on the market about 20 years. The earliest invention I know of came from Germany. Quite a few units have been made in the UK. But the bulk of the technology was developed in Europe. And in the western part, particularly the southwestern part and southern part, Texas, where there's lots of limestone, the problems are worse than they are in Europe.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
And the Europeans don't have a good grasp on how to market in America. And so they had products that some of them worked, some of them didn't, but they didn't market in ways that were easy for the public to know about it, for one, and for distributors who sold the product to not compete with the individual buyers. So a lot of the supply base in the United States just cut off those sources and said, we're not buying from you anymore. That's what created the opportunity for Scale Pro to start. I had just retired, turned my company over to my son, and needed something to do, hoping to work half-time. But the Scale Pro has really taken off now, and in fact, Spokane Schools has just installed them in all of the school buildings in the district.
Wow, and obviously on a, in terms of the size of the fixtures that they're going to be working on, is it just proportional? I think you mentioned earlier it's really just the size of the copper wrapping per the fixture it's going to be implemented on?
In the case of schools, most of the applications are either in the shower rooms in the gymnasium, but more so in the kitchens. And most of the schools have 3 or 4 inch pipe that supply the kitchen area, so it keeps the dishwashers and the dishes clean. There's no scale deposits on the silverware, and the water heaters basically don't ever plug from scale.
I honestly think it's revolutionary, and with products like these that you hear about here and there, until you try this stuff yourself, sometimes you're like, that's probably too good to be true. But I had the opportunity to grab one of these. Like you said, you look at it in the box and think, how can this? It is a box not bigger than an iPhone type box, and it really does the trick. You plug it in and go. It's pretty amazing. How can folks find out more information about this? What's the website for this?
It's scale-pro.com.
Scale-pro.com. You've had a lot of success over the years, like we've talked about in the program today, manufacturing other people's products, manufacturing your own ideas and products. What type of employment issues have you run into over the years? Or I shouldn't say it in a negative way, but rather, what have you learned from having the needed labor force to produce a high volume of these products?
I've hired over 4,000 people during my career, and the marketplace for people who want to work in manufacturing jobs has significantly changed over 40 or 50 years. It used to be easy to hire people and find people who wanted to put parts together, but it's more difficult today. Most young people that are getting out of school today have aspirations for big, cushy jobs, and they don't want to work in factories that build things. But the people who we hire now really get a grand sense of satisfaction from being able to put parts together and see them go into a box and see the box go out the factory and see the check come in and go into the bank and those checks pay their wages and their benefits. And I think actually manufacturing and building something is a very rewarding career. It's fairly easy to sell to people. That's more rewarding than just writing software for websites.
Right. And, a common theme, really, I think here on Business Talks and Let's Talk Spokane is this idea of the trades. I know both Spokane Public Schools as well as Central Valley School District here locally, when I chatted with Ben Small not too long ago, this real focus on the trades and the benefits that come from our younger generation understanding the opportunities in the trades, whereas that's gone away. Would you say in the last 20, 25 years there's probably been a drop in maybe the exposure, the image of these young folks going into the trades, but I think as you're describing, they can be very satisfactory, very satisfying employment.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. But I think what happened in 1990 when the dot-com crash happened and it was followed a few years later by the housing market and banking crash. I think a lot of young people were discouraged by saying a lot of these manufacturing jobs, like my father or my grandfather did, have moved offshore. They went to Mexico or China, or they've just gone, and so they don't want to join an industry where they see it in continued decline. We're actually seeing now jobs come back to manufacturing jobs, particularly in electronics, come back to this country because the cost and the rapid change of technology makes it to where by the time you get a product into China and successfully import it back to the States, it's obsolete already. And so the only way China can make money is to build something for several months, several years even. Most products we build now are going to be obsolete in less than a year.
That's fascinating, Lee, because you're talking about the longevity or the operations cycle, and you're saying that there's a much shorter run is what's profitable. Or if it was going to be shipped over to China, it'd have to be a much longer run production cycle. However, longer run production cycle, then you're saying by the time that reaches the market, it's already obsolete.
There's nobody designing iPhone 7s today. They're on the next one and
That's
the next
right.
one after that. And all of the tooling that was built to produce the iPhone 7 is probably going to be put out to pasture within 6 months.
Which is a scary piece. I think of the design and engineering business as how you always got to be thinking one step ahead. Lee, I wish we had you for a full hour here today, because we could go on and on about, I think, the costs associated with starting a business, as well as more employment issues, the complexity of the businesses and the organizations you've run over the years. Lee, thank you for being with us, and hope you come back to the studio and join us again.
Thank you.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.
In study after study, money is often cited as one of the top conflict points in a marriage. Finances can be an emotional topic for couples, especially when money is tight. So it pays to get in the habit of discussing it on a regular basis, even if you keep separate finances. At stcumoney.org, find 6 tips for making the conversation easier. Tell you about our new sponsor, Stay Fierce Senior Fitness. Stay Fierce offers conditioning programs and personal training designed specifically for seniors. Owner and certified personal trainer Tim Brummett is himself 64 years old and has lost over 150 pounds in the last 3 years, so he knows how to work with seniors to get in shape. All workouts are in a private facility, not a big, busy gym. Just Tim and his clients. Visit StayFierceFitness.net to learn more. That's StayFierceFitness.net. Of course you can do it. Stay fierce.